Done. We are live. Here we go. I've noticed big Roy Thomas fights this week on social media. On
I didn't catch any of that. I believe it was his birthday.
Yes, I think that's
why. I saw a posting about his birthday, and I was like, "Oh, look at that!" And then I just moved on with my life. So I did not see any of the drama.
I glanced at some of the Roy Thomas fights. One guy was documenting his racism. I was like, "Ooh, there was stuff I didn't know about."
Oh wow! Okay, yeah, I could say that I know nothing of Roy. I never met him, and
excuse me, I need some water.
Okay, I've never met him, so I never had any real dealings with him, and I only know him just basically from the comic books. Like there's nothing really about him that I'm aware of because I never went searching for like information on him. So I didn't really read any interviews with him because the books that he was writing, I don't think I was actually reading. I wasn't reading those Conan books when he was on that title. And off the top of my head, I can't even really remember, other than Conan, what else he was writing. I think maybe Avengers.
Oh yeah, he wrote a lot of stuff.
Right. But it's like when I was reading comics, he was already
he wasn't
gone.
writing as much at Marvel by the you're early to mid 80s, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah, he was writing mostly stuff at DC, All Star Squadron.
Okay. Yeah, because he quit Marvel because Jim Shooter didn't allow him to be a writer editor. Now, Roy Thomas didn't necessarily have a problem with Jim Shooter erasing writer editors, but he expected him, Roy Thomas, to be given a dispensation.
Okay.
I want all the special dispensations. Me.
So he quit, and went and did main stuff at All Star Squadron.
Yeah, that's when I pretty much stopped reading his writing when he went to DC because I was not a fan of All Star Squadron. There was he was so into like the history of the characters of DC, and I just wasn't. That stuff was so dry and dull to me. I know people love it, but I was just like, here's another character. Oh, he wrote the Invaders for Marvel too. That
was in the 70s still.
Right. He wasn't, and in the Invaders, he was very into the Marvel Golden Age characters, but not to the level he was in All Star Squadron.
Mm-hmm.
That All Star Squadron was like he was like deep into. He was one of those guys who I don't think created a lot of stuff himself, but liked to tie all the old stuff together. That was really what he seemed to enjoy doing. He loved to, go back into DC's golden age and pull out these characters and tie them all together into a continuity. Which I was not the least bit interested in 1984 or whatever. Not interested in it now, so.
Yeah, I don't think I delve into the history of comic books until maybe 5 years after I was really into it.
Yeah.
Like I was just reading the new stuff.
Right.
And then, through like Marvel Triple Action or whatever was the reprint book of the time. And I think I was reading the Fantastic Four one. So that's World's Greatest Comics.
Right.
And then the Marvel Tales was the only history lessons I was getting because there wasn't really too many, as far as I was aware of at that time, too many ways to read like the history of Marvel. And then eventually I picked up that Marvel Saga book that kind of tried to put everything together.
I loved old comic books and learning the history in the old comic books. I just didn't need Roy Thomas writing stories, new stories, filling in the gaps of all. I've never been a fan of filling in the gaps of continuity and stuff like that. I know some people are. Some people love it when you go back and tell the story of what happened between Batman 13 and Batman 14. But I'm just like, I would rather read Batman 13 and Batman 14 in a new story. That's just my taste. So,
well, quality varies, but
yeah,
when it comes to Conan, because he liked the source material, he tried to be as close as possible to the originals, even though, unlike most Conan fans, he didn't seem to have a problem with the inserts that L. Sprague de Camp did for the mythos. But
I generally enjoyed his Conan, but mostly because of John Buscema. But I didn't know anything about Conan. I never read any of the Conan books, so there was not like I didn't have anything to compare it to. So
what he made, what Roy made with Conan was make the character accessible to a new generation.
Right.
If you cared enough to study the character, you'd found out where all the stuff was coming from. The thing is, the more you notice where he picks up his stuff, the less impressed you actually are with his writing.
Yeah.
Because it's thing.
He's not the one coming up with the stuff.
Yeah. And apart from that, his dialogue isn't that. I mean, it serves its purpose, but so the what he's good at is meshing all the sources into a coherent narrative.
Craig Russell certainly didn't need him on Elric. That's funny. I was just reading that story about Craig Russell was doing, drawing the Elric books, and Roy Thomas was scripting them. And finally he said, well, why do I need Roy Thomas scripting them? And he put his foot down and said he wasn't going to do them if Roy Thomas was scripting them, because Craig Russell was the one breaking them all down into their visual storytelling, and then he was giving them to Roy Thomas to script what had already been done. So I forget who was the editor. I think it was the first comics editor, decided he wanted Craig Russell rather than Roy Thomas. So then Roy got pissed off that he was kicked off of Elric. So the story goes that I was just reading.
Right.
And I always wondered how he collaborated with his wife on the West Coast Avengers.
Yeah,
those were Roy and Dan.
Yeah, never read them, so I do not know.
It wasn't bad. I mean, Englehart stuff. It was the West Coast Avengers. So the miniseries was written by Roger Stern. Because he introduced the concept. But when the ongoing started, they gave it to Steve Englehart.
Yeah.
And it's not Steve Englehart's best work.
I was pretty much out of reading mainstream comics by then. I remember I bought the West Coast Avengers miniseries. That probably came out in like 84 or 85. I can't even remember. But then when the regular series started, I was like, the miniseries I found mediocre, so I didn't need a regular series of it.
Yeah, and that's the problem with Marvel at the time. There was a lot of stuff that was serviceable.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I suppose that there wasn't much excitement from Marvel at the time, which I understand why, because it's when they were trying to sell the company. One of the times they were trying to sell the company, and Shooter was caught in the middle between a bunch of writers and other editors complaining, and then the management wanting to give Shooter more reasons for the hired help to complain about him. So yeah,
I picked up the West Coast Avengers when they came out. I don't recall if I got the miniseries. I know I had got the ongoing series, and for me, it was just part of it was just part of the monthly haul. I was getting
Yeah.
all the books at that point in time, so it was more of like I just wanted to read everything I could get my
Right.
hands on,
Right.
and I don't. Other than the John Byrne books, I don't think I really paid attention to who was writing it. I think I was mainly, but at that time, I was mainly buying the books for the art and the artist, and then just the characters.
Yeah.
So, and because many of the characters in the West Coast Avengers were part of like Secret Wars, so it was like just a natural for me to get into. So I
Right.
couldn't even tell you which books, if Roy worked on them or not. Um, was probably when they did start dealing with going back in time and dealing with older characters. I don't know if he was responsible for making the Vision actually be the original Human Torch's body type of thing. There was
Yeah, I
that
don't remember.
storyline
That
going
was a
on.
70s thing too.
It was
that?
in the Celestial Madonna storyline. It was
Right.
Englehart.
Oh, okay.
But Roy was the editor in chief, so it could have been his idea.
Yeah.
But Englehart was dropping hints during the Zodiac storyline.
Ah.
Oh, okay.
And then they came up with, he had like the Vision, the Wonder Man's brain waves.
They have
or
Wonder Man
something.
brainwaves patterns,
Uh-huh.
and then that's why so they kind of wrote that's why the Vision fell in love with Wanda, because um, Wonder Man was always in love with Wanda. So they were trying, and I think it was probably the John Byrne doing the series, wanting a triangle like he had with the X-Men, but he was just doing it with the Avengers.
But boy, that Carl Burgos story really is one of the saddest ones, where I read it in, what was it, Fire and Ice, which is a Bill Everett art book / biography. And they were talking about how badly Bill Everett was treated by Marvel. Every comic book story is how bad someone was treated by the company.
Right.
But Carl Burgos, who created the original Human Torch, and the rights to the Human Torch, the original Human Torch, were about to revert back to him, because enough time had passed and Marvel hadn't used them. And that's why and I forget which Fantastic Four annual, they have, I don't know, someone in the Fantastic Four go into a cave and find the original Human Torch. And he shows up and then he like dies right away.
Mm-hmm.
But that ruined Carl Burgos. Like 2 weeks, he was 2 weeks away from being able to file and get the Human Torch back when that happened. And he was just like crushed. And it's just like,
So that would have been. So that's probably around the time they reintroduced Namor into the Marvel universe as well.
I remember seeing it was like one of the early FF annuals.
Yeah, I think it might have been the first annual.
Or a giant size. It was 19. So 39 plus 28 would be 75.
I think it was in the 60s, though.
No, in the 60s, the problem was a different one.
Oh, okay.
Because Burgos was not working regularly for Marvel at the time after they started producing new stories. But in fact, he didn't have much work because Kirby and Ditko came back, and the rest of the stuff was made by Senat and Heck, and Burgos wasn't getting there. Burgos was sort of the cover editor during the late 50s, but Goldberg then was in, and he was in charge of production. He was the traffic manager.
Uh-huh.
But after the no Thanksgiving here, normal day.
Sleepy people probably didn't even have to say hi.
The Saul Brodsky became the production manager after the implosion, and the guy doing most of the cover work was protection work was Goldberg. He was because he was the colorist. Burgos wasn't doing much but then Stan Lee wanted to have a human. Either Stan Lee or Martin Goodman wanted to have a Human Torch feature. Most likely Goodman because he couldn't leave it alone. And they didn't. Burgos was expecting to be called to produce it. And why would Stan Lee call Carl Burgos? So he didn't, and it was Burgos' daughter who revealed that he was so pissed off he destroyed everything related to the Human Torch that he had at home.
Wow. Speaking of production, that just reminded me. I don't have it yet. I'll have it next week to show you probably. I brought on some production art.
Oh, okay.
Where if you remember, I was buying those pop art cover that the comic book covers, mostly from the 60s, that referenced pop art. And I ended up finding the Harvey comic Bunny, and I got some Bunny original art even this past year. Well, there was this one cover I was looking at. I think it's like Bunny number 21, which I also got a copy of off of eBay. That's on its way too, which has got Bunny dancing with like a stereotypical artist painter on the cover. She's in her bikini, he's in his beret and painting outfit, and they're talking about art. So I've had that particular cover on my watch list for a few months now. Finally, I was like, well, let me check it out, see if there's a good copy of it, because it's a weird cover. I notice in that they're like, is that one in they're like dancing in the middle of the cover. She's in a bikini, and she's got light skin, and the background is a light pink. So I notice on some of the copies of it, they blend together. I guess the pink in the background has faded a little. So it's like she blends right into the pink background with her pink skin. So I was looking for a copy that there was the most contrast between, and you really can't tell most of the time on these photos or scans people have, and the prices on that vary. I think I ended up getting one that was rated at about a 7.0 very fine for about $20 shipped. Some people have like a 5.0 for $70. So it's like the prices. I'm sure nobody's buying that comic but me right now. But as I was looking for that, somebody had the production art for that comic. The 4 pieces of film that they made the plates with. Meaning that, and I think this is how it goes back in those days, the color separators, didn't work in color. They worked in shades of gray. So if there was a 10% red they'd paint a 10% red on the red the red plate acetate. So they'd be working on 4 different. I don't even know if they worked on paper or acetate or whatever. And so if the color had 100% cyan in it, they'd get 100% black and painted right there where the cyan is. And then they'd take those 4 pieces of art that the color separator did, and they'd make negatives out of them. They'd get a big stat camera, and they'd make negatives of them. And the negatives, of course, would be in black and white too, because printing plates aren't in color until you put the ink on them. So then they take those negatives and make the printing plates from the negatives. So they'd make the cyan printing plate from the cyan negative, and then they just put cyan ink on it. They'd make the magenta printing plate from the magenta negative, and then they'd just put magenta on that printing plate. So all the film, all the negatives are all in black and white because they don't need to be in color. So this is all 4 of those negatives from that cover, which I am going to, when I get them, scan them all 4 in and make cyan, magenta, and yellow channels out of them and put them together in Photoshop. And I just even Wilson, you know what the 3M proofs are, right?
Yes.
Yes.
I
That's
have
another
some.
thing. After the printer did all that stuff to make the plates, they would send Marvel, DC, or Harvey. They would print them on a sheet of clear acetate. So all 4 printer plates are printed on clear acetate and overlaid on each other so that the Marvel, DC, Harvey, whoever can check to make sure the color's right. So those used to be like all over you can occasionally find them on eBay, but they used to be everywhere. You've got some there. And they'd have, like I said, they'd be sheets of acetate, one with the black plate on the top one, then the yellow plate, the blue plate, the red plate, and those were the proofs. So first you got the color separator painting in black and white. Then you got negatives from those separations. Then you got the printing plates, and then you got the proofs. Here, let's show them. This is a proof. That's got all 4 printing plates on different layers. And these are proofs of what I ordered from the negatives that I ordered, which are the same as these, only not in color. In black, each one is in black and white that I got, or I'm getting. So so I'm going to make my own proof. Ooh. Starfleet Academy. There's another one. And those were often known as 3Ms because that's the company that makes the acetate, I think. The color proofs. Mm-hmm. And they were usually thrown out. Or
9 times out of 10, they'll be thrown out at one time. The reason why I have these is because I used to get artwork from the manufacturing department would get the artwork back from the printers. And so when I was picking up the artwork, sometimes they would just go, "Hey, do you want any of these?" And I was like, "Yeah." I'm a pack rat. So I took it. And so for a while, I think I was probably the only one on eBay selling them. Because I did have a FedEx box full of them for a long time. And the ones that I have here are kind of only the ones that I kept and I never tossed up onto eBay because I was like, it's just a really cool production piece that, they were one of a kind.
Yeah.
Sometimes they would be 2 because something would get rejected by editorial and it gets sent back and then they start the whole process over again. So sometimes there will be 1 or 2 and then sometimes if you had the second one, you could see where the mistakes were and how they made changes to them. And I noticed a lot of the changes was in the black plate. It could be either a TM was not put in there or sometimes there was always 2 to the black plate because of the UPC code would be removed. So you would have 2. One goes for newsprint and one goes for direct. So sometimes there will be an extra plate in that kind of a format.
Right. We could see where the Curtis code was stripped in or out and the
exactly.
UPC.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting. So I'll be getting the and we never saw. I don't remember seeing I don't think they came to the office the negatives that were made. That
very few.
Yeah.
Very few, because the only thing we really got to see in the office were the paste of mechanicals, where they were made in the office.
Right. Lots of stats,
and then those 3Ms. But I don't think I've ever seen the plates that were made, the black and white ones.
And by the way, it was $50 for, which
Oh,
is,
okay. Yeah.
for I think that issue of Bunny comes from like 1976.
Mm-hmm.
I guess they got 21 issues out over like 8 years.
Right. So it helps that it's also from a title that's not necessarily popular.
Yeah.
If that was a
I didn't even
Spider-Man book, you'd probably be paying way too
right.
much to the point that you probably wouldn't have bought it.
No, I wouldn't have bought it. Right.
Yeah.
I like I said, I didn't even know Bunny existed till I started looking for those pop art. Remember, I think it was somebody on here in the comment section who showed that, but there was like, oh, here's a pop art one, and showed the Bunny one or mentioned the Bunny one, because I never knew it was a comic, but it's got a lot of good covers, that Bunny, because it was really trying to be 60s and 70s hip. So every cover is trying extra hard to be hip in a way that only a comic book cover from Harvey that nobody was reading can be.
Right.
And speaking, the price of Archie Comics bikini covers is way high. It's amazing to me because the Bunny comics also have a lot of bikini covers, so they show me Archie covers. But Archie covers with Betty and Veronica in bikinis, I guess people collect them.
Yeah, there's kind of, from what I've seen, there's like a subgroup of people who like getting those, especially if they have like text on it that are either double entendres.
Oh, those ones are like $200.
Yeah.
But like even the normal ones are like 30, 40, 50, $60. I'm like, whoa.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's that subcategory of, people wanting to get something like that. And I wonder if it's more of the sense of things are collectible for this point of reasons, and then you start seeing what other reasons, like for the Marvel 25th anniversary covers, they were all the headshots. And for a while, that became like a subcategory everyone wanted to collect because some of them are hard to find.
Like the Muppets Baby one.
Right.
And
almost anything from the Star Comics line.
Right.
And I don't know if it was just that those were kiddie books, so they weren't kept as pristine, or maybe people weren't buying them. I don't know what the print run.
I'm sure fewer of them were kept. Period.
Right. Yeah. So then that becomes, that kind of a collectible, which is fine. I mean, when they first came out, I wanted to try to get them all because they just looked really cool.
Yeah, I didn't even remember them.
Order.
Like I said, I was probably not buying Marvel and DC then.
Yeah, because that was for the 25th anniversary of Marvel. Right. Yeah, so that was 85? No. 85. 85 or 86.
61 is year one. And it's probably 86.
It's probably 86.
But who knows? Just that they didn't always come out in the right time frame.
Yeah, that was the other thing too. And it appeared on all the books, and I think it even appeared on books people weren't really sought to buy it as a collectible, such as Marvel Age. That's another one that's an expensive one, because Marvel Age for many people was very disposable.
Yeah.
I don't think people were collecting them,
right?
In that sense. So, yeah, you can see how things become oddly collectible within their own collectible market.
And now they've got a Marvel Age omnibus. How crazy is that? Good evening, Terrence Comic Crack.
Yeah, I'm interested in picking that up just for the historical value of seeing what they advertised. And I'm curious to see if there are titles and announcements for issues that never came out. Because I remember seeing house ads for stuff, and they never came out.
Oh, yeah.
And
Frank Miller, Doctor Strange.
Mm-hmm.
That may predate Marvel Age.
That probably does. Yeah, but again, it's like one of those things where I'm always curious.
It was a house ad that appeared in their comics.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It reminds me of the
Good evening.
the first Avengers the Avengers Justice League crossover that never actually came out. Because I remember getting Comics Interview that it had stuff. The comic book shop that I used to go to when I was a kid, that's called Fordham Comics. It's actually still around. I remember the comic shop owner had black and white copies of all the covers, and so he had them full size, and they were just really great covers, George Perez covers in pencil. They hadn't even been inked yet. No idea how he got them. I don't know if he pulled them out of the magazine and just reprinted them, or he knew someone working in the industry. But it was really cool to see those. And now you could only see those in like the old magazine publications, except for, when they did eventually do a crossover. I understand that they did print some of that artwork in there.
Yeah. I would like to get that JLA Avengers oversized hardcover, but it's expensive. Goes for about $400 now.
And they were limited edition. I remember they announced right off the bat, we're not going to overprint this.
Yeah. See, I didn't even. I had the JLA Avengers trade paperback, the one I still have, on my shelf for at least a decade before I finally read it. And it turned out I really like it. I mean, I really like especially the George Perez artwork.
Yeah.
And that was one I would really like to see oversized with, because the problem with it is I sometimes pick it up and read it almost like Sunday comics, because almost every page is a double page spread, and it's just so well George Perez just designed the storytelling so well in it. But I never got the individual issues, but they're square bound, so they don't really open flat. And the trade paperback, the same thing. It really doesn't open flat. I don't even know if the hardcover opens flat due to its binding. So I really kind of want to see it. I'll have to buy a copy of the individual issues and tear them apart, and rebind them so that I can actually see the pages.
That's a process you should definitely record and put online, because ripping comics apparently is a big deal on the internet. But you're ripping them for a good purpose.
No, you're how you're going to be guaranteed to have thousands of views. Watch me destroy this copy of JLA Avengers #1.
And there's 4 issues, so you can destroy them each uniquely.
I'm not going to destroy them. I'm going to make them better.
There you
understand?
Hey, you haters out there! I'm not destroying them. You're the ones who don't get it.
I'm making them better,
improving them. We in the early '90s, we used to tear up comics at Marvel to let off steam. Sometimes. You can still remember we used to tear up Kevin Kovasik's comics in front of him. Hey, Kev, it was a great issue of Deathlock you drew. You'd be like, oh. I think we did that to a few other people, too, just for fun. But I can remember Kevin. Oh, no, I will call the Comics Abuse Hotline on you.
Yeah. You can do you can do the watch me destroy this copy of JLA Avengers, and I'll do a reaction video, and I'm going to call it "The Assassination of JLA Avengers by the Coward Jared Osborne."
Mr. White Gloves, haven't seen you around in a while. Good to see you. Gus. Oh, that was Gus and Terrence saying hi to each other. Dun, 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 dun. One comic I bought, this was a strange week of comics for me at the comic shop, because when I got the final order cutoff for this week, a month and a week or two ago, I had no comics on my pull list this week. So I ended up putting a couple comics on my pull list. And then when I was in the store this week, I ended up picking up getting 6 comics altogether, all first issues. And the first issue I bought is a reprint. And I'm trying to remember it's Black Science #1, the 10th anniversary edition. I'm not quite sure why I ordered this. Because if you remember, this is the one I bought all 43 issues in one big trade paperback a few months ago. Enjoyed it, liked it, good stuff. Matter of fact, I think I have Black Science #1 somewhere. I bought the original first issue, but then didn't buy the rest of the series for various reasons. But I'm like, why exactly did I think it was a good idea to buy this? It's just Black Science #1. And in the back, it is a few pages. The only extras are these pages of script. And if there's one thing I've never been interested in comic books, it's this reading the script. I don't think I've ever read. It's got some nice covers in the back, though.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm like, what exactly caught my eye about this to make me? It's only $4, I think. But I'm like, I can't remember what made me order this. Besides the fact that I like Black Science.
Right.
And I'm like, okay. I got Black Science #1, 10th anniversary edition. And it's a local comic shop day edition, too. Which I don't think there was a local comic shop day this year, because I've seen these type books be coming out like for the last month or two.
I don't even recall the event.
It's just kind of that they put out special books for the local comic shop. And I think they're mostly reprints or stuff. But in the past, it's been on like one day the books come out. But I guess it can come out anytime. But Black Science was a good series. Fun stuff. There's such a good banter to listen to while cartooning. Okay. We'll try to keep up some banter for you.
Uh-huh.
Trying to figure out why I bought comics. I don't know. Why did I order this one? I don't know.
Yeah. Sometimes you'll see something and it's like, why did I buy this issue? Yeah. You know, what made me attracted to it in the first place?
Yep. Like I said, I get an email from my shop that says final order cutoff. And all I have to do is click on a link to order that comic. But it also, if I click on the link, it brings me to a description of it. Shows me the cover, gives me the previews description of the comic, and that's usually what I just say. Sometimes if I want to look a little further, I'll do a little search for it and find out more about the comic or whatever. But sometimes, like especially if it's like a first issue, I'll order it 6 weeks before it comes out. Then it comes out, and I'm like, I can't remember what this thing is about at all. I wonder why I ordered it. Because often I order things by who does it,
right?
But there's plenty of there's plenty of indie comics out there by people I don't know. And if I like the preview of it, I'm willing to order it. So. Did you make it to the comic shop this week, Wilson?
I did not, mainly because there was no comics for me to pick up. I do not know why, but
it must have been an off week.
I had 2 comics listed. I had 2 comics listed, and on Monday or Tuesday night, I got an alert that my order was canceled.
Oh.
And it's like, okay, so I go onto the website and I go to check, and there's nothing really to indicate why. Because the email said it was canceled, but on the website it says incomplete. So I guess maybe the books didn't come in.
Yeah.
Would be the only thing I can think of. But the thing is like, again, I don't know how they have it if it's automated. I have an idea that it is.
Right.
And I'm guessing maybe one book didn't show up. So the whole order gets canceled. And I started looking through my past orders, and I did not realize it happened at least twice before.
Okay.
Where it's like the books are set because they're on my pull list
Right.
to automatically get pulled. And I never noticed of getting an email or an alert that this was canceled. And one of them was like a big order, like 8 books in a magazine. And so I don't know if the system has it where if one item is not complete, the whole thing just gets turned off.
That's weird.
Yeah.
Did they eventually come in?
No.
Well,
they have come in, but I have no indication that I wasn't charged for them.
Right.
It's just that the whole order was canceled. So I had a little back and forth.
It was strange that they canceled the whole order.
So I sent in a ticket and was like, okay, why was this order canceled? I didn't cancel it myself. And they sent back and was like, this is something that was automated, but they didn't give me a specific reason why. And I was like, okay, I wasn't charged, no big deal, but I would still like those books.
Yeah.
How can I get those books? And it was more like, oh, just put them into your shopping cart or buy them out. It's like, am I talking to a person or is this an automated thing? And it's like, I'm really tempted to just stop doing the subscriptions and just go in and pick up the books every week. Because it's like
you every never know if you're going to get them then.
Right. And that's
but if they're going to make it a hassle.
Yeah. And then that's the thing. It's like, if it's late or if that book got canceled, okay, fine.
Right.
Whatever.
Right.
But why cancel the whole order? So
I
have no idea.
That's got to be a bug in their system.
Yeah. And again, I asked a couple of questions and I kind of got back like very generic answers.
You're going to have to ask at the shop.
Yeah. But then again, I do know when I was at the shop, I overheard them talking and saying stuff like, I don't understand why they do this. Right. And I'm guessing because I know they have a warehouse type of thing.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it all goes through there because sometimes one of the complaints were, why do they put one book in a bag when you have multiple orders? They could have all been put into the same bag. And it was like overhearing a conversation of basically it's done somewhere else, as far as I'm aware of. And then it gets sent to the store. So I don't think they're actually pulling the books in the store. I'm guessing they're pulling the books in their main warehouse and then sending them into the stores.
Let's see. Someone. Undead Queen Jared Osborne, what are your thoughts on Somna #1, which is another... This is another book I got this week. It's one of the distillery books.
That magazine size, by the looks of it?
Magazine size, square bound. I'd prefer it saddle stitched / stapled, but oh well. $9. I think it was 50 pages of comics. I remember counting, and it's Becky Cloonan and Tula Lute teaming up to do a story. Also, we got some nice spot gloss varnish on the cover. Though I don't know why you do a wraparound cover on a square bound book, because you really can't open it up to see the whole cover. And they only wrapped around a little bit of the hair. But I like what was interesting is Tula Lute did some pages and Becky Cloonan did some pages, but their styles blend, even though their styles are completely different. Let me show you. Let me give you up close. That's Tula Lute's style. She's got this sort of realistic watercolor-ish style. And then Becky Cloonan is doing more realistic. She's doing some pretty more realistic than I've seen her do, but also sort of graphic designy and very sort of traditional comic books, black ink. But going for a pretty higher level of realism, and I think than I've seen her do before. So I really liked the artwork. Yeah. Be careful of what page. Yeah, there's some nudity in it too. I liked the artwork. I think it's more issues too. There's at least another issue coming in January. I'm probably going to get some more of it, but I would have to say this is definitely aimed at the female reading audience, not even the female comic book reading audience, I'd say. In that, not that I know a ton about sort of prose books that are aimed at female reading audience, but I could tell that was kind of what this is. In that it's the story. I don't know what year or when it takes place. It's kind of like, I would guess, around the Salem witch trials, because it stars this woman right here, who her husband is some side of lawyer, judge, something, and they were just burning a witch. So the story starts out with there's a witch trial going on, and her husband's like, "Come on, you got to be with me. We're burning this witch at the stake," kind of thing. And she's like, "No, I can't go with you. I'm not feeling well today." And he's like, "What will the town folk think?" But meanwhile, she's having this. She's the main star of the book. This woman, whose name is something. Maybe it's Somna. I don't know. But she's caught up in this. She's having these dreams, these sexual dreams about this. I don't know, this supernatural demon or something. This sexy supernatural creature is coming to her in her dreams. Meanwhile, she's also sexually frustrated because her husband ain't banging her. Every time she comes on to her husband, he's like, "Oh, stop that. I'm all worried about these trials. I'm too stressed at work." And she's like, "Dude, you're my husband. You're supposed to be banging me." And he's like, "Yeah, work's got me all worked up." So she's sexually frustrated and has this demon coming to her in her dreams. Meanwhile, she's talking to her best friend in town. There's a good witch burning for you. They don't mention if this is the U.S. or Britain or France or wherever. They don't mention the name of towns. I found it interesting and amazing art that has sleep demon around the story. Yeah. The art was really good. The storytelling was really good. And like I said, and her friend is like lusting. Her married friend is kind of lusting after this guy in town. Meanwhile, she's going back and having more of these dreams about the sleep demon. And then her husband is like, "I got to go to the big city because they need a witch finder." He's like, I didn't mean to turn into a witch finder, but here I am. It's a good chance for me to make my way in the law. And so he's got to leave for the big city. And meanwhile, this supernatural sleep demon is tempting her. And we don't know if he's crossed, the sleep demon has crossed over to the real world or not. And she also finds out that her friend in town was having a secret affair with this guy she was lusting after. So there's all sorts of, forbidden love and sexual frustration and stuff that sounds right at home in a romance novel. But it's not really like over the top like I'd think of it, being that I've never read romance novels, and I know some of them are over the top, and so in my brain they're all over the. Maybe it's more like Jane Austen. I don't know. I've never read Jane Austen either, or Ellen. So in my mind, that's what I compare it to, but I really don't know much about what I'm comparing it to. Very sparse on dialogue, and the show and don't tell is just the right amount. Yeah, the artwork and the storytelling were just flawless. I mean, first of all, I'm a big Becky Cloonan fan. I'm a big Tululute fan. So the two of them together and it just worked really well together, the two different styles. So I'm going to get some more of it. I don't know how long it's supposed to go. I don't know which way this, but I can tell this is probably something that is, I mean, two women are doing it, and it really seems aimed at the women's market, if such a thing exists. But yeah, it was good. A nice one. I picked that one. Like I said, there was one other thing from Distillery that came out last month, I think it was, that Jock drew. Jock, Jock, the Batman artist guy. But I flipped through it and just didn't like the art. So I ended up not getting it. This one, I was ooh, I'm getting it.
Is his art different than what he normally does? Like, do you think he's experimenting?
I don't know how to describe it. Oh, it's only 3 issues. Okay, I can get 3 issues. I'll put it on my pull list and get 3 issues. Oh,
50 Shades of Witch Burn. But the way you described everything, it's more like 50 Shades of Witch Burnings.
Yeah, it could be like I said. It's definitely aimed at that 50 Shades of Grey, or I don't know.
Yeah,
I've never read these books. I only know of them.
Why are they wasting time distributing it in a comic book store?
Because the few weirdos that like indie books like me will pick up a couple of them. I don't know. Yeah, the Jock art did look different than what I remember it looking. It looked kind of slapdash and unattractive to me, and I usually like slapdash.
Also, I mean, I don't know, to get to Pablo's thing, I don't know if they try to get it outside the market as well, and maybe that's why it is magazine size.
Yeah.
To try to get it to step it a little bit away from being a comic book. Maybe it is more of a graphic novel in order to try to sell it outside the market.
I imagine once they get the 3 issues done and paid for, that's when they're going to try to bring it outside the comic book market. Because that's the usual plan. As long as you can get enough people buying it in the comic book stores to make it pay for itself, you can then, try to sell it other places. I would hope that's their plan. Because if they're trying to sell it just in comic book stores, I think they're going to be in trouble. Because I don't think your average Spider-Man fan is going to be interested in it.
That's the problem. This is the problem. A lot of people are trying to do some things that are different than what's expected for the direct market, but they won't sell in the direct market. You have to go after the people who may be interested in reading that book are not going to go into a comic store unless you drag them in chains.
I think the problem is when you said the people who might be interested in reading that book, I don't think those people exist outside the comic book store. I don't, people here in the U.S. just don't read comics unless they're comic book fans. So like I said, I don't know. That seems very, I don't know what they're going to do with it. I don't know how you get people who don't read comics to read comics, even if it's something they might like. That's a tough sell.
Yeah, there's always been a problem with distribution. There's always been a problem advertising. At least with Distillery, it only came across my radar because, there are TikToks about it.
Yeah.
So, maybe they're getting their fans that way. I don't know. I don't know how well they're doing, but at least I'm more aware of Distillery than some of the other newer comic book companies that are out there. Just because of their at least impartial to their advertisement, seeing it at least on social media.
Right. They had a good social media presence.
Yes. So maybe
how I
that's how
learned
they're
stuff.
maybe that's how they're doing it.
Who knows? But like I said, goodish. Somna was. If you're a Becky Cloonan and Tula Lotay fan, especially. Becky Cloonan's a pretty good writer too. She wrote another series for somebody. I can't remember the name of it. Something about a spaceship that I have over there that she wrote but didn't draw, because I know she drew Local, I think it was, with Brian Wood wrote it. That's where I first saw her work, and that was really good stuff. And I followed her since then. And then The Southern Cross, that was the name of it. Which that's when she wrote it and someone else drew it, I think. I was like, oh, she's a pretty good writer, because I enjoyed her writing on it. Yeah. So trying to get the Zoomers. Yeah, could be. Mafia washing money through comics, $5,000 a month at least. Garrett seems like a facilitator. That's the word on the street.
Yeah.
Hey,
comic section.
Yeah, Southern Cross. There we go. That was a good book, Southern Cross.
Comics sold better when the mafia was actually involved.
When the mafia was skimming money.
Okay, at least they were being distributed.
Yeah, because the only reason pulp novels and comics existed was so that they could distribute the moonshine back during Prohibition.
Gotta have that distribution network going.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what I keep saying is the distribution.
Yeah, so you guys running moonshine? No. We just got some funny books here.
Yeah, just some magazines.
Yeah.
Like I always found it funny when I only read it a few years ago that the reason Playboy was able to get a foothold was one of the uproars about comics got fewer comics distributed, so they needed to distribute something. So Playboy was one of the beneficiaries of that. I can speak. I can remember the words.
Okay, so I heard a story years ago, and this was from a comic book shop, that
things you hear in comic book shops.
Oh yeah, that there was an issue of Silver Surfer. It might have been issue 3 or issue 4, and you guys can tell me if you ever heard this rumor, that the reason why you cannot find copies of that book in the back issues is because someone in the mob kidnapped the trucks that they were on and wanted to hold those hostage to get money from one of the companies. They didn't really specify what the company was, and that even Stan Lee himself did not get a copy of this Silver Surfer issue because it was stolen by the mob. And I never heard anything about that or even close to it, where it was like, where are you getting the story from? It's like, oh, one day ask Stan Lee. It's like, yeah, I'm not going to ask Stan Lee that. But it was just like such a weird story that I never heard repeated anywhere. And only fairly recently I did hear about at least something to do with the trucks and comics, even to the point that there was a recent, and by recent, last 20 years, we're old. Every time we say recent, we're thinking it's 10 years, but it never is. That there was comics found in a warehouse that they were just left there. And what happened was as they went deeper and deeper in the warehouse, they were just comics were getting older and older. That might have been just connected to the ripping the covers and sending back in. But instead of even ripping the comics, they just never distribute the comics. They just kept tossing them into a warehouse.
Right. That's because there are actually people who make their living warehousing things. That is their actual job. There's somebody, they own warehouses way out in the hinterlands where they where land is cheap. And what they do is when something fails or a fad goes away, when all of a sudden nobody wants pet rocks anymore, they buy up all the pet rocks that are left for pennies on a dollar and stick them in a warehouse. And then they just wait. They just wait for 5, 10, 20 years until someone's interested in again, and then they sell them. And that's when you hear something that's a warehouse find, that's what it usually is. So that might have been somebody who bought up those comics for pennies on the dollar and just stuck them in a warehouse. Matter of fact, they may have bought them from the guys who didn't want to tear off the covers, and they were just like, just get rid of these. And the guy put them in his warehouse, and they sat there for 10 or 15 years until he watched a news report on how comics were valuable, and he went, "Oh, someone want to buy these comics?" That's usually how that happens. Let's see. The artist was Andy Bellinger, who did Southern Cross. He did a nice job too. I like that. Story never had it had a semi-proper finish. I remember there was 2 or 3 story arcs. It kind of ended. Happy Thanksgiving. Solid 4S forced bend.
Shannon. That's Shannon. Hi, Shannon.
Okay.
Happy Thanksgiving, Shannon.
Oh, and that truck story, that may have came from what actually happened, where it used to be, if you like, in the late 70s, if you were like, I used to get the Mile High catalog all the time. Like, you'd send them a quarter and they'd mail you their catalog. I would do that as a kid in the late 70s. And also, I think my first price guide I got in like 78 or 79. And if you look at there's like Conan #3, a couple other issues that always like, I think it was Conan #3. It was like, it always said like low distribution, and it was more expensive than the other issues. It wasn't actually low distribution. It was that the dealers were buying the issues from the distributors before they could make it to the newsstands, especially on the West Coast. So that those are all gone from price guides. Now, nothing says low distribution after it, because there was never really low distribution. It just
Artificial
was
scarcity.
Yeah.
Right.
Just like when you hear about the Jack Kirby Fourth World stuff didn't sell. That's because a lot of it was sold off the back of a truck. There is no shortage of Jack Kirby Fourth World stuff that you can get right. You can go to any Comic-Con or any comic store and get Jack Kirby's Fourth World stuff. There was plenty of it out there. More so than if you were to go in and try to get Supergirl from the same era.
Yeah.
Loved those mail order catalogs. I never ordered from them, but I love to look through them and make up an order that I was going to order if I had some money and a means of ordering it. Like, a matter of fact, it was Mr. White Gloves who made an appearance tonight. Oh, I remember him telling the story about, I wish I had known this when he's about my age, maybe a couple years older. I can't remember. I think he said he grew up in Texas in the 70s and used to collect cans and bottles and get the nickels from them. And then he'd go to the post office and get postal money orders to order the comics with. I was like, if I had known that, because the only other way I could order them was to ask my parents for a check, and that wasn't going to happen.
Right. But I do remember recycling bottles to get some extra money to buy comics. And that was something like,
in the 70s in New York, there was not deposits on bottles.
I was doing it in the 80s. It was one day I was like, I was kind of bummed because I had spent all my money. And it was like, there was one more issue I wanted to get. And my cousin's like, what is it? It's like, I was like maybe a quarter short or something. It was like, so he just walked the street, grabbed a bunch of cans and bottles, recycled them, and then gave me the 25 cents. Like, here you go. No problem there. And he's like, why didn't I take of this? And it was like, yeah.
How come I've never thought of this before?
Never thought of that. It would be funny because it's like
the early 80s when they brought.
Yeah, it was definitely in the 80s. It was that whole part of everything could be recycled. It's up to us to save the world, and they were blaming us, the people, for polluting when it was really the companies doing it.
I mowed lawns, collected bottles, sold fruit racked. Okay.
Rake leaves.
Yeah. And then he'd go and get postal money orders. I wish I knew about postal money orders at that age. Because I didn't.
I got a couple of issues of comics because I was that kid who would get to the place that was selling the comic book shops, the newsstands. Before I even discovered comic shops, I was hitting all the newsstands, and sometimes I would show up and they haven't even unboxed them yet.
Oh yeah,
and I would just be so upset. That was like, can I just put these on the racks for you?
I know. There were times we used to just hang around because I think the comics used to be out on Wednesday afternoons, or maybe it was Thursday afternoons then. And we used to just come in and go, comics out yet? Comics out yet? Comics out yet? So the guy would come outside the store and go, the comics are out.
I remember I did that once or twice where it was like, hey, the comics are in the boxes. I haven't had time to open them. It's like, can I open them? Can I put them on the rack? Open them, put them on the rack. And I think I got 1 or 2 books for free for doing it. It was like,
you
I was
can buy those comics, right?
Oh yeah. Whenever I was a
90s kid during the mid 2000s, I remember recycling bottles to buy comics at a secondhand store. I bought Spawn and Mad Magazine. Bought a lot of my books from Comic Book Sales Company from New York. The mailing list cost them 10 cents. Wow. Yeah, I used to send a quarter to Mile High Comics, I think it was, and get theirs. I don't remember. I think that was the only catalog I got. This is the late 70s.
I don't think I ever mail ordered any of the comic book stuff.
No, I never actually ordered any comics through the mail.
Oh, so you made a wish list.
I just made a wish list. But like I said, if I had known that I could go to the post office and hand them $4 and they'd give me a postal money order for it,
right,
I might have done that. But I didn't know such a thing. But asking your parents for a $4 check for comics would be like that. Too much scrutiny.
Yeah, two questions. No, 2 questions. Why do you need a check, and why do you need comics?
$4 for comics? Are you crazy? And I would, Mile High in the 80s would have that 2-page spread in all the
ad
comics.
Right in the comics.
The ad in the center of the comics with that bright yellow, and you see the prices of the books and go, that's amazing. I could own Amazing Spider-Man #1 for $300. And it's like, there is no way I was going to get my parents. Even if I came up with the $300 myself, they would not I wouldn't be able to give them the $300 and they'll write a check. It was not going to happen.
Nope.
That goes to your college fund.
Yeah. Bought a lot of my books from Comic Book Sales Company that's the Passaic. Got a few books from Comic Sales Company. A lot from Passaic Book Center. Robert Bell, Mile High. Bought my Amazing Fantasy 15 for $300 through mail in 1978 and still have it. Wow, 8.0.
Nice.
Man, he must have raked a lot of leaves for that $300.
Mm-hmm.
That's I can remember like in the early 80s when I had my first job, I was making $3.35 an hour of minimum wage then, washing dishes. And it takes a good 40 to 50 hours or something to make $100 at $3.35 an hour. It is not a short period. It's not a small amount of money, $100. So to make $300 for Amazing Fantasy 15, whoo.
Yeah. 1978 money. Yep. That's a lot.
Yeah.
Comics.
I finished reading this week Habibi by Craig Thompson. Really good stuff. Just excellent, but a tough read. in terms of what happens to the characters. It is really well done. It is really well written. It is really well drawn. But these two characters go through hell and back. I'm not sure. I'm not sure what time frame it takes place in. It takes place somewhere in the Muslim world, and I think modern times, but not that modern because they got trucks and dams and motorcycles and. But yeah, I don't see, there's no cell phones or Wi-Fi or anything like that in it. But there's still sultans and harems. So, I don't know much about the history of the Middle East to know exactly what time period this takes place in. But they're two orphans that kind of grow up. She's like 6 years older than him and kind of raises them. Then they get separated. She ends up in a harem. He ends up being a eunuch. And they almost die on many occasions. They were separated for like 6 years. They come back. Very powerful story. Good stuff. But the artwork is just beautiful and imaginative. And there's just an imaginative page like there. And there's stories from, I assume some are from the Quran. And I don't know where some are, I don't know, are just general Middle Eastern sort of, because she learns from her, she was married off, sold to a man to be his wife when she was like 10 years old. And he was a scribe who taught her stories and taught her to read and write. So reading and writing are a big part of the book too, and ways to read. Like here's a page where she's telling sort of the mythical stories to him. And just really, really, really well done. But, very adult, not in a pornographic way, but in a, this was made for grown-ups, not as like entertainment for teenagers, as so many of our comics are. But really, really good stuff. I liked it a whole lot. I'm going to keep it by my chair and look through it for a while now too, because there's so much to look at. So a lot of the art is influenced by Middle Eastern art, where since the Quran doesn't allow for representational art, there's a lot of traditions in the Middle East of art with letters and patterns and geometric shapes and letters turning into patterns. So writing is woven right into their art. And he does a lot of that in here too. So I'm going to go back and look at a lot of that stuff. I see Gus, who's a big fan of it. Yeah. I said nothing, not to spoil it, but modern time. Yeah, I don't know how modern it's supposed to be, though. I was trying to figure that out. Right. Yeah, good. What's the most you spent on a comic? I paid $50 for a sketch on a blank. I have spent more on books than comics, so I don't know what that count. Like those artist editions, I've spent like $125. I don't know if I spent $150 on one, but $125 on an artist edition. I've never spent $125 on a single comic. So, yeah. Milk bottles were still a return bottle when I was young. 5 cents. Oh, okay.
Milk bottles. I've never seen a milk bottle.
Shows our Western civilization time doesn't quite apply. Yeah, that's part of it too. That's why I couldn't figure out what was going on, because, like I said, our Western civilization time wasn't there. Yeah, I enjoyed it a whole lot. I'm glad I enjoyed it too. Pulled my little red wagon up and down alley collecting all sorts of stuff to return for money. Even sold cucumbers one year that a farmer gave me door to door. Boy, he wanted that ASM 15. Wow. Oh, he sold Grit magazine. Wow.
That's the second person that we know about that sold Grit.
Sold Grit. They certainly were. Yeah. I like it. This is one that I'm going to keep it. In my next to my chair and look at it for a while too. I do that with some of the comics, some of the books, I should say.
Yeah, I keep a stack of books that it's like I will eventually read these before I put them away. And I did. I did read 3 issues of the Uncanny Spider-Man this week. So I finally got around to them.
I keep them in my magazine holders that I got from Marvel.
I have a few of those myself.
It used to it's gone and faded now, but it used to have Marvel comic book title names on there. Editors would keep in their office.
I had those at work, at Marvel as well, where I used to keep the when the new books came in, they went right on that rack because I knew I'll be getting the artwork from those books within the next month, and then I'll be able to grab them real quick. And then once those books were like mailed out or at least processed, then those books would come home with me because I just took them out of my bundles and kept them there. So this way here I could read the books more often because, again, with the job that I did doing art returns, I read the books at least 4 times. I would read the books in black and white when they would, because I would send it to the Comics Code. Right. So when the books came in, I would give them a read and then send them out to the Comics Code. So that's the first time I read the comic. Then we get the physical comics in. So I would read the comics when we got them in. And then when the artwork came in, I kind of would read the comics through only the artwork. So I really knew the books by the time those books came home. And it's like after doing that job, I would read the books once and then that's it, and not remember them because I wasn't getting them in different stages. Because even with the artwork, I kind of read it through the color guides. Sometimes they were lettered, sometimes they weren't. Or I would, and then again, just read the artwork itself. So I would be reading the same book at least 3 or 4 times in different stages of its creation. So I think that's why it stuck with me more than when I'm reading the books now.
Interesting.
So now I'm trying to figure out how to, by just keeping the books with me. So I read through this, these 3 issues.
Right.
Not knowing anything else that's going on in the Marvel universe.
Right.
And especially in the X-Men portion of the universe. And after reading these 3, I can honestly say I still don't know what's going on in the X-Men universe or almost within these books. The funny thing about it is that I do like Nightcrawler as a character. You guys know I really enjoy Spider-Man as a character. So that Nightcrawler is a new Spider-Man. I found it interesting because it takes me back to the 80s when Spider-Man got the new costume. He didn't necessarily get a new identity, where here Nightcrawler gets a new costume and a new identity. So it's kind of things are repeating itself. But I don't know if I could say I enjoyed it. I didn't mind reading it, but I was left with more questions. That's a little more frustrating with the concept. Like, did I really need to read the X-Men books before reading this?
Right.
I don't think the book did a good job explaining to me what is really going on. Nightcrawler is accused of doing some kind of crime. But every time they show a drawing of that crime, he looks differently. They don't really tell me if he was possessed or if he was mutated or changed. He just looked like a demon. But it doesn't really, and I have to read it again. I don't know what caused him to go on this like rampage and kill a bunch of people.
You mean in the flashback where they show him committing the crime, he looks differently than he does in the comic?
Yes.
Okay.
So I don't know when the flashback happened. Did he physically change?
Right.
Or is this his mental state at the time? You get told he gets the costume from Spider-Man. Okay, fine. They don't tell you where Spider-Man got the costume. Did Spider-Man wear that costume? It doesn't look like a regular Spider-Man costume. So it looks like it was a costume created for Nightcrawler. Spider-Man in the first issue, and then he appears again later in the third issue. So that's your connection to Spider-Man. But there's still a lot of things going on with the X-Men that, again, reading it, apparently the mutants were told, get off the planet. If you don't get off the planet, we're going to kill humans. For every mutant we see, we're going to kill 10 humans. Not really explaining how does this corporation or entity has that power. and there's Sentinels walking around New York scanning everybody.
Ah.
And to me, it's like, yes, I've been far away from the Marvel universe, but to me, it's like I don't really understand. Am I trying to be too logical? It's like, why would anyone accept this going on? Yeah, it does feel more like I stepped away from X-Men. I came back, and they're now in the days of future, past, future, which is now today, almost current time. So I'm sticking with it for a little while, but it's like I really don't know what's going on. And since the X-Men are going through their own reboot, I don't even know where I would even start with that, because the fall of the X-Men, or the fall of X, is the newest crossover thing going on. So to me, they're presenting a bunch of mysteries that it just seems like there's too many mysteries going on at the same time, because I don't know what's happening with the X-Men. and that's the thing. I just jumped in, and I figured, with a first issue, they would explain more to me. And I feel like I didn't get enough explanation of what's going on. The artwork is beautiful.
Well, I think the problem too is first issues nowadays aren't really first issues when they come from Marvel. They're all just kind of relaunches. I mean, they're only first issues because first issues sell better than 17th issues.
Yes.
So as first issues are often in the middle of a story.
Mm-hmm.
They're not set up like first issues used to be set up. So it's kind of, storytelling wise, they're not really first issues.
Right. So to me, it's like, okay, I am completely lost. Luckily, I'm interested enough in those characters that I'll continue to read it. It's strange also what's going on with like the main villains that are chasing them as some of our organization. That is, they basically took Roxanne, AIM.
They got Wilson.
They got me. They completely got me. I guess maybe it did work in their favor, because they took a bunch of villains that we are aware of, and they're kind of teaming them up. So Roxanne's involved in it, and some of Spider-Man's villains are involved in it. So you have the Rhino in it, and you have the Vulture, of all people, kind of the head of this organization they're creating the Hounds program, which are mutants who hunt mutants.
Right.
Are basically started with this, from what I can see. And part of it's also the New Mutant Warlock character using his virus, the techno-organic virus, to do some stuff to it. So it's almost like someone's like, let's put everything together, mix it all up, and here's some characters.
The funny thing is, if it was issue 367, you'd probably be more forgiving of it. But you also probably wouldn't have picked it up.
I probably wouldn't have picked it up. Well, it would depend on the cover. If the cover was interesting enough, and Nightcrawler in a Spider-Man outfit might have made me pick it up.
In the old days, you wanted to buy the books with the higher numbers. Yeah, that way you knew it was a popular book and endured the test. Then you went back to find the earlier issue. Well, in the old days, you had no choice, too. I like to, still one of my favorite books from my childhood is The Human Fly, which is not a very good comic book. But I was able to buy it with the first issue all the way through to the end. And even at the time, I knew it wasn't a very good comic book. But there weren't a ton of comics starting up in the late 70s. And that's one that mid to late, and that's one that was. So I always liked it, even though I like it. Even as a kid, I'm like, this ain't a very good comic book. But still. And another number one I got this week. One of the writers is Andy Samberg from Saturday Night Live and Brooklyn Nine-Nine, right?
Oh, wow.
Andy Samberg, Rick Remender, Joe Trotman, Roland Boschi, and Moreno Dionisio. The Holy Roller. Double-sized for only $4, so that was good. I picked it up and I liked the artwork in it. Let me show you some of the artwork. I thought the artwork was pretty good. But I don't think I'm getting another issue of it because you know what it is? What book was the robot book I think I got last week? That Paulo said, what did he say? Sounded very contrived. The story of how the robot, and I was like, yeah, that's the only way you can get to that place. But I was okay with contrived in that case. I'm not okay with contrived in this case because I think this is going to be the story of a superhero who fights with bowling balls against bigots.
What?
The main story takes place in the beginning, we get the story of this kid who's being bullied at this arcade/bowling alley. So he's growing up, he's being bullied. Meanwhile, his father wins the bowling contest. Okay? So at this bowling, his father wins the bowling contest. He's being bullied by a kid who's like 5 years older than him, too. He's always like, you're even 4 years older than me. Quit picking on me. There's not a good fight. And so he makes some sort of bet with this the kid makes a bet with his bully that he can beat him at Paperboy, the video game. But then the kid gets called away by his father because his father just won the big bowling contest where he got $500. And also the bully kid, his father owns the bowling alley. So he thinks that his father winning the contest is so lowbrow. Then we cut to, well, hold on. That whole bowling took place during his childhood, Cleveland, Ohio, 1986. Then we cut to northern Japan today, and that same kid who was being bullied is working for Greenpeace on a boat. I used the term working loosely because first we get a scene where he gets the drink knocked, and he's pretty much a jerk now too. This guy playing with some guy's sticks, and he then throws them in the water. So then he's working for Greenpeace. Then there's 5 or 6 pages. He goes has a talk with the captain of the ship, and the captain of the ship tells him, your father is dying. Go back home. And meanwhile, he hasn't been like home in 20 years or something. He's like, go back home and make your peace with your father. He's dying. And he's like, and you've never done a lick of work around here, so you may as well leave. Okay. So then our hero goes home to talk with his father, and his father tries to give him the bowling ball from his bowling days, and first there's an incident where he's surprised to see his old synagogue was turned into like a fast food place or something. He's like, oh my goodness, I can't believe my old synagogue it's turned into a fast. As soon as he says my old synagogue, the driver of the car, this stogie chomping guy, kicks him out of the car. And he's like, what? Like, get out of my car. So you find out that, I guess Cleveland, Ohio has changed and there's lot more racism and anti-Semitism than there used to be. So then he tells his father his father's like, come on, let's do something Jewish. And he's like, Dad, I'm not interested in my Jewish heritage, nor am I interested in bowling. And you're like, okay. And he talks to his father for a bunch of pages. His father goes, I know you're not interested in bowling, but take this bowling ball with you. 8 pages later, I think he says that. So the son takes the bowling ball with him. I don't even know where the son's going. I thought he was going to go to his father's house and stay there. No, he's just got a backpack and is walking around now. I'm like, where's he walking to? He doesn't have a place to go. It's not like he got off the plane and then went to his hotel. He got off the plane and went to his father's house. Now he's just walking around with his pack and a bowling ball. And he sees the old bowling alley. So he decides to go in and look around. He goes in and looks around. But meanwhile, his old bully is there. And he's like, you won't believe who's in here. His old bully calls the gang together. And they get together and, pull over. And this guy, was like, what the heck is going on? And his old bully is like, you lost the bet. You were never supposed to come in here again. Starts just like a pizza-faced Jew to grift on a deal. Clyde, is that anti-Semitism? You? Long time no see, Goonberg. And so that they proceed to beat him up until he smashes them with the bowling ball. And that's kind of where it ends. It ends with him having won the fight because he smashed them with a bowling ball.
Okay, so it was not going anywhere I thought it was going. Because when you just first opened it and showed the cover, it's like, is that like a spin-off from Mystery Men? Because they had a character that had a bowling ball theme to it.
I think he's going to be a bowling-themed superhero who fights anti-Semites in Cleveland.
But why is he called Holy Roller? Why is the comic called Holy Roller? Because his bowling balls roll?
Yeah.
He has a holy purpose, I guess. Interesting.
I was just a little baffled. Talk about something this seemed contrived in a bad way. It was like, we came up with an idea. We want a bowling-based superhero. How do we get there?
You don't. It's a stupid idea. That's what a real editor would say. I don't care that you're Andy Samberg.
But it's Rick Remender and Andy Samberg. So
well, Rick Remender better be paying well to write this crap.
I just found it baffling.
No.
See, this is where I kind of it says Kingpin meets Inglourious Bastards meets Batman. Equal parts action and humor. And I get the Inglourious Bastards mention because have you guys seen Inglourious Bastards, the Quentin Tarantino movie?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen. I don't think I've watched the whole thing, but I've seen enough of it to know how it could connect to it with the violence, at least.
Right, but at the end, to give away the end of Inglourious Bastards, at the end, the bastards kill Hitler, like in 1942 or something. And Rick Remender was just like, it's just like he mentions it's just like a revenge tale. It's a Jewish fantasy story. It's like we would have liked to kill Hitler then. So I made a story about us killing Hitler then. So I think this is some sort of along the same line. I think there was a genre he mentioned of like Jewish fantasy revenge stories, which I really don't know that much about. I only heard him say it in Inglourious Bastards. So I think that's kind of what this is.
A retelling of the Golem of Prague might be more appropriate and more interesting.
I found it a little too. They got Wilson, and then there's hope. All right. In the old days, that you wanted to buy with your higher numbers. We got that. Okay. Number 1, comics follow porn. Gina Lola, first time doing this. I miss the creation of savvy characters they came up with back then. Art looks good. Yeah, the art was good. The storytelling was good. I just found it kind of cluttered me. I liked it. I just was like, I got no interest in this strange bowling hero fighting back against anti-Semites.
Yeah, no.
I mean, I got nothing against fighting back against anti-Semites. It's just
the
basis for a comic book is not really up my alley.
The U.S. comics industry still has not gotten over the fact that celebrities working in comics always produce shitty comics because they don't get it.
Right.
Even if they're supposedly comedians.
Right. It
Which
wasn't particularly funny either.
Which Andy Samberg is not. He just thinks it is. The only reason why anybody why Brooklyn Nine-Nine is fun is because you have the most fuddy-duddy cop from Homicide playing playing a gay captain.
And it's the charm of the actors and the delivery of the actors. You don't get that with a comic book.
But but the Andy Samberg character is the worst character in Brooklyn Nine-Nine. I like everyone but him.
It's a good ensemble show. I enjoy that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. It's definitely a good ensemble show. And again, I've been in the position where I've worked with quite a few independent creators that do other stuff. Many directors and stuff like that who wants to do their own comics. Some do it in a really good way because what they're doing is they're creating a comic book and then using that to sell the pitch to a Hollywood movie and stuff like that. And then you have others who are like, hey, I have some money. I want to make comic books.
Right.
And then you have where you have celebrities go, I want to make a comic book. And unfortunately, a lot of times is they have the celebrity to get a bunch of people together. They never get an editor or story editor even.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's like, they know they're not hiring the right people like an editor or story editor because they don't want to hear no. They don't want to hear somebody go, yeah, this is a ridiculous idea. So
it was well crafted.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it looks like visually, it looks like a really cool book.
It's well crafted. It just seemed kind of pointless to me. I guess they were trying to entertain us, but
yeah, I think it could also be that wish factor of, I want to write a comic.
Yeah, could it be? I've got a funny idea for a comic.
Yep.
And turns out it wasn't that funny an idea.
Mm-hmm.
A bowling-based superhero. And if it went for pure comedy, if it went for sort of Mad Magazine slapstick, maybe it would work in that context. But it was like too straightforward superhero.
And when it comes to the idea of the Jewish revenge story, going back to Inglourious Bastards, there's one good scene in Inglourious Bastards, and it's the one where they're pretending to be Nazis. That's a good. That one comes out all right. The Brad Pitt character. I think the funny part is, what if the guy is an Italian American but doesn't speak any Italian? Okay. Which actually doesn't work for the timeline, because if you were an officer in the U.S. Army in 1942 and you were Italian, at least your parents immigrated to the United States, and you grew up hearing Italian in the house. Even if you were living in Texas, because the other joke seemed to be, the guy's not from New York, he's a redneck. He's from the South.
Yeah, I haven't seen Inglourious Bastards in a long time.
Which is, of course, it's a joke that's not funny. Again.
But Habibi, much more written for adults than Holy Roller. When I mentioned comic strips to entertain teenagers, this might be on that level.
the celebrity thing doing comics. That thing got old 15 years ago.
It's funny because I can remember now passing on that when I read the Final Order cutoff, like I was talking about, and because I didn't put that one on my pull list, I saw it on the shelf and looked through it, and I thought it looked good. I think I remember now going, a bowling-based superhero? No thanks. And so I didn't order it. A bowling-based superhero. And it's funny to me because this X that's on the bowling ball keeps reminding me of that Dark Horse character. I think his name was X, and his logo looked just like that.
Very much like that.
Yeah. So I kept going, is this a Dark Horse? It kept distracting me every time I saw that X. Marks the spot.
Just the whole bowling ball aspect of it reminds me when Marvel gave us a bowling day type thing. Event, the bowling event for us to, I don't know, be happy we worked at Marvel. You know, it's just, it's. I think I would have rather had a pizza party because there at least would have been something to consume. But it was just one day. It was like, we're all going bowling, and I went. And Daisy was great because she dressed up like a 50s bowling, a typical movie bowling 50s gal. And it was great. And she was getting so many angry looks from people. And it's like, you don't get the joke, do you? That this is what they gave us as a gift to hang out. It's like, he could have gave us raises. He could have gave us a bonus. Instead, you just gave us a day at the bowling alley.
A bowling party. Do you remember how mad Bunch got at that?
I remember he was pissed, yeah.
Our friend Bunch, for some reason, like Marvel was throwing a boat. What they were doing is they were giving everybody the afternoon off and having a bowling party. Our friend Bunch, that whole week, was getting worked up because he didn't want to be forced to have fun. So all week he's getting more. He's like, "Oh my goodness, what's going on with this bowling party? I don't want to bowl. I don't got bowling party." The rest of us were just like, "Bunch, it's just supposed to be a bonding." We were all cynical about it, of course. We didn't really care, but most people would rather have the afternoon off and go bowling than have to work. So finally that Friday, Bunch got so mad, he marched into Bob Harris's office and told him there was no way he could force him to bowl. Bob Harris had no idea what was going on. It was just like, okay. And we all went bowling. And now Bunch has no idea why he was so mad at bowling. We're like, Bunch, why were you so mad at bowling? He's like, I don't even know. But he got himself worked up all week.
Like, you will go and you will have fun.
Jared, did you watch Seth at Noah Van Sciver? No. I didn't. Was he on his channel? I saw Seth on Cartoonist Kayfabe.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't see him. I don't think I subscribed to Noah Van Sciver. I don't think I've ever seen him on YouTube. So I have not seen that one. But I liked his Cartoonist Kayfabe interview. Especially at the end when he was getting all deep and poetic about creativity. That was some good stuff. Some good stuff. Want to do a rip, read, and slab? I think I still got a few of those left. Let's see.
Sure.
Let's go to... Did we do this one? No. 1990, August, Marvel Superheroes. Let's present. Share some screen. Window. There we go. We got Mighty Thor 424, Quasar 15, and Silver Surfer 42. How's that for some Marvel 1990s superheroes you weren't expecting?
I read that Silver Surfer.
I think I read them all. I'm almost sure. I'm not positive on the Quasar, but I definitely was collecting Thor at the time, and I was picking up Silver Surfer.
I have read none of them.
Wait, I think I read the Thor too. Yeah,
that's the Ron Lim Silver Surfer. Thor is Ron Friends, and I think that's a Mignola cover.
Yeah, that looks like a Mignola cover, but I don't think he did the inside.
No, he was only doing covers.
It's Paul Ryan inside.
Paul Ryan inside.
Yeah, I would have bought them all.
I could have worked on any of these books. I have no idea. Because 1990 I was there when I started.
I would slab Quasar because I really like that cover. I would read Thor, and unfortunately that means I would rip the Silver Surfer.
Ripping up the Surfer.
I'm gonna do the same thing. Slab Quasar, read Thor, and rip Silver Surfer. That was an intermediate storyline that was kind of a filler because it happened between the Thanos Resurrection and the Thanos Quest miniseries that served as a stage for the Infinity Gauntlet.
What is up with those green knockouts behind Quasar there?
So I think that's the Gardener, and then on the ground, Stranger. It's a Stranger, and on the ground looks like a Watcher.
Yep,
I think those are all Watchers.
That is an odd coloring choice.
That is.
I mean, it kind of works in that it makes Quasar jump out at you.
Right. I'm also bothered by the text on the side. And I don't know if it's because there's text on the cover like that, or is that it is so close to being cut.
That could just be the scan I got it from, too.
Oh, yeah, that's the possibility.
But it's also type. That's not hand. That looks like type.
It is.
You didn't see that too often.
And that the text on the top, the journey, I can't even read the rest. Into Mystery?
Yeah, Journey into Mystery, part something. Weird. That must have been the story.
Yeah, it's just weird that the text is that you can't, from what I can see, you could barely read it because it's just all black. And it's almost like it's black with a shadow. It's just design-wise, it's a very confusing looking cover. And the only reason why I'm slabbing it because it's Mignola.
Yeah. I think I'm going to slab that Thor cover. That Thor, because I like that. I think I like that cover. The type really works for me on that cover.
It does. It's a good design to the cover.
And
I would replace the big blue creature with the dolphin.
The
Celestial. I think it's a Celestial.
Yeah, Celestial Dolphin.
Yes, that's what we need more. Is a Celestial Dolphin. And I would put flamingos on the Quasar cover. And I would make them nice and pink so they pop out.
I'm going to Dolphin the Stranger in the Quasar cover. And the flamingos are going on the Silver Surfer. Each on his in each of his shoulders.
Well, let's see. I'm going to slab the Mighty Thor. Oh, I don't want to read Quasar, so I'm going to have to read the Silver Surfer and tear up Quasar. I just don't want to read Quasar. I don't. You know where I'm going to put the dolphin?
Where?
I am going to take the Sentinel's head and turn it into like a fishbowl.
Ooh.
And put the dolphin inside the fishbowl.
So the dolphin's really the brain.
He's going to be operating that armor, it's going to look like.
Nice.
Then I'm going to put the flamingos on the Surfer cover. They're going to be standing on that purple table going, where's this guy coming from? Is he supposed to be coming out of that vent that's on the table? What's going on that one? The flamingos are going to have some questions.
I think so too.
Now, were you guys buying these books regularly at this time?
I was definitely collecting Thor at the time. He was in space, and if I remember correctly, he eventually breaks his hammer trying to destroy one of the Celestials' heads. I think like trying to get to his brain or something, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And it might have been when the alter ego wasn't Don Blake at that time. It was Eric. I forget Eric's last name. Masterson, who eventually will become Thunderstrike.
Masterson, not yet. Masterson's already been merged with Thor here. Yeah.
Right. He would eventually become Thunderstrike. But that was a story going on that it was in Thor in space, and it was the first time I think while I was reading Thor that he went to space. He's gone to space a few times, but I think this
no
is the
wonder
first time.
Image got a chance.
Yes,
Mr. White Glove was reading Thor and Silver Surfer.
Yeah,
Did you buy Quasar #1, Wilson?
I'm sure I did.
Yeah,
I'm almost positive. Let me look up what the cover looks like, and I could tell you because I'm pretty sure. I liked Quasar. He was a character that I got introduced to during his time up Project Pegasus, because that was a thing. Miniseries, not a miniseries. There was a trade paperback of reprinting the Thing's stories, and he had like his own Marvel team up for a wild book, and so Project Pegasus was a trade paperback storyline that I read, and I think I was introduced to Quasar in that.
That was a good series. George Perez drew a bit of it, and DeFalco and Macchio used to write together. They had, and they did some good Marvel Toon 1 issues with Perez and with Byrne, I think, did some of them.
Yes.
Yeah. Back then, Thor and Silver Surfer appeared in the same anthology in Brazil, but Quasar was not published. They published the first 3-issue arc to introduce the character because he was going to join the Avengers. And then the only Quasar stories, there was a Marvel Comics Presents story that they ran as a filler with Quasar, and they used that. And then only the Galactic Storm crossover parts. Those were the only times they published Quasar.
All I remember about him is he had his quasi-stellar energy or something. I don't know why I remember that phrase.
Yeah, and the way that Mignola is drawing the energy field from the quantum bands, that's not always supposed to appear.
That really is weird that they knocked out those figures in green.
Yeah. Let me check who inked Mignola, because
so the cover, issue 1 was 1989 for Quasar. Written by Mark Grunwald, penciled by Paul Ryan, and looking at the colored by Paul Beckton.
Oh, he did. He did the insides. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but looking at the cover, I am sure I picked up issue #1 of Quasar.
WTF surfing is that? I don't know. I have no idea what the Silver Surfer is doing in that cover. It's like he's coming out of a vent.
Yeah, I don't know if he's coming out of it or is he chained by
chained to the vent?
He's like miniature chained to a
table. Well, in the story, the surfer is stuck in a place called Dynamo City, and he can't get out because they absorb all cosmic energy, and nobody's allowed to possess any. So, and since he can't get out because he needs to pay an exit tax, and he doesn't have any money, he tries to become an entertainer but even then, it's not going to make enough money. What he figures in the story is that they can juice him up enough so he can get away, but he can't.
Huh. Bowling, flamingos, and dolphins. It seems like the return of the Big Lebowski. Hello, everyone.
Well, that's
Hello.
like your
Hold the
opinion,
room
man.
together. It's like you're not up on the new information.
Yeah, so I was definitely buying Quasar. I remember he had an office in the Baxter building. So to me, it was like, oh, they're connecting things even more.
Mhm.
I remember I first saw Greg Capullo's work on Quasar.
Mhm.
I don't remember when he came on the book, but I remember noticing, going, oh, this guy's pretty good. And he was pretty good, it turns out.
Yeah.
You get good.
Let's see, another first issue I got was one that I worked on.
What was the name of Moondragon's alter ego when she was trying to get into Quasar's pants?
Oh, I have no idea.
Yeah, I could not tell you.
Oh yeah,
I
Quasar
remember
was one of the first works
HD
Greg Capullo did. Oh, the pregnant Quasar. Oh yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, I remember that cover. Yep.
HD Steckley. That was Moondragon. She would pretend to be his secretary.
What was her name?
HD Steckley.
HD Steckley.
Here's
the first Bad Idea comic to hit comic shops in a while. Inebrio Horse Feathers. Check out that spot gloss there. Whoever did that did a good job. But It's a Tony Millionaire comic. I'll show it to you. And it's just this weird one-shot Tony Millionaire comic that isn't even in the right proportion. I think he just draws at whatever size he wants. Because if you notice, there's a lot. He drew this at like magazine proportions for some reason.
Yeah.
And this was even the comic, and it's just this weird story about Scampered, about these people on a sailing ship. People is a stretch. These characters on a sailing ship, including Inebrio Horse Feathers, who I think is this duck-like creature. And they get into a duel with a clam. And it's just hard to... At one point, a character drinks bleach, and it causes problems.
Amazing.
And it's just wild.
Yeah. Does that comic sound contrived?
This comic is insane. This is one of those comics you just kind of make up as you go. I don't know.
But that would I be interested in reading. Screw in December. Give me 20 Millionaire a day.
Tony Millionaire is always pretty interested in, but I've been doing a lot of production for Bad Idea for stuff they've been doing for cons and things. This is the first one that's gone to comic shops. But unfortunately, my comic shop isn't going to be ordering from them anymore because the last Bad Idea batch didn't sell well for them. Look, we got to order one copy for me.
Right.
Thought it was fun stuff. Bad Idea. Tony Millionaire. I haven't seen his stuff come out anywhere but Bad Idea in the recent years. I don't know what he's up to. Oh, and this is also the comic that for one of their Kickstarters, because I've also been doing like stuff besides conventions, they've been kickstarting some stuff. And for one of the like add-ons in Kickstarter, they made a version of this, except it was 1 inch wide and 1.5 inches tall. I don't know if you remember me mentioning that. And we're putting it together, and they kept going, make it a little bigger. I don't think we're going to be able to read the type. I'm like, read the type? It's an inch and a half tall. You're not going to be able to read the type. Like, we want to get it to print as clear as possible. So I think I sent it to the printer. Was like, just send it as high a DPI as possible. So I think I sent it to them at 1200 DPI.
Wow.
At an inch and a half tall. I'm like, all right. I will not compress it at all. We'll send it to you at whatever the proper DPI, whatever the proportional DPI is. I think it went out at 1200. I was like, whoa, that's the highest DPI I've sent it out. That's a sexy name for a lady. Inebrio horse feathers.
No, it was Moondragon's.
Moondragons.
Oh, Moondragons.
I don't think either of them were. But I think that was the joke.
Hey, there's Tith Goblin lit for the party.
Hey, look who it is. Happy Canadian Friday. Comics for dolls.
Comics for ants.
You know, the guy's only doing it for some doll. And a comic that I got that was pretty good, which actually came out last week, but I had enough comics last week, was The Deviant. I don't know how many issues this is going to be. A Christmas Story by James Tynion IV and Joshua Hickson with Hassan Atsmain Elahau. Someday I'll learn how to pronounce that guy's name, but not today. Double-sized issue, $6. It's this Christmas noir story. Once again, I don't quite know how to describe it besides Christmas noir. Because we flash back to 1973 to some killing in a department store. Then we flash forward to present time. Or are we still in 1973? Still in 1973, we're at Christmas time. They find these boys murdered. Then we flash forward till Milwaukee, December 2023. And we have a comic book writer who's interviewing the killer who was in jail for killing these kids. And it was actually a really good few pages of discussion between this comic book writer and the serial killer, who's just bored talking to this guy, who might not be the serial killer. Or he might be. Who knows? Because no. Or there were two killers. Who knows? Because the cops ran into this first killer who was wearing this. You can't even see it here. He's wearing this mask. And at the end, we have someone else show up at the end wearing the mask. So we don't know if it's a copycat but it's very, it's a very Christmas noir murder story. That's the best description I can give you for it. The story, Joshua Hickson does a nice job with the art. Storytelling is good. Overall, there he is. Hold on. And once again, I don't know if the cops actually caught him because the cops run off and one cop runs off into the snow chasing him. And then we have a big double page spread of the Christmas killer, whoever he is. But then they never show the cops. I don't know if he got away or whatever. And then we got this guy in jail for the crimes. I suppose that guy is supposed to be the killer, but they never told us how they caught. I guess they didn't catch him right then and there, so it made things. The storytelling. It's purposefully confusing. So there's that. But it was a fun. I'm going to buy some more of this. I don't know how many issues it's supposed to. I never know how many issues. I wish they would tell me if it was a mini series. That would help me to decide. Like with, Somna, now knowing that it's 3 issues, I can go, yeah, I can. 3 issues I can do. It helps me plan it out, knowing how many issues it. Comics for Dolls. Another James Tynion series. That guy is unstoppable. Let's see if he finishes any of them. I think he's finished the ones I've picked up, but I'm not 100% sure. That's right. Is he writing Department of Truth?
Yeah.
I haven't seen an issue of that in a while, and it hasn't come out.
I still have to buy the. I only have up to volume 3 in trade paperbacks. Somebody was complaining last week that in the chat that the issues are printed out of order in the trade paperbacks. They're not. The thing is, they are themed with the stories that they are reprinted with. So it's not you don't get confused. It's a bit like one of those old Vertigo series where they reprint them like 11, 12, 17, 18.
Right.
Because 13 to 16 are a flashback story or something.
Okay. Yeah, Department of Truth has been a good book. I've enjoyed that one.
And it gets better and better. It keeps getting better.
Yeah, it's a good one. I'm glad you're enjoying it too. Because, matter of fact, what book did I just see that's coming out again that I liked? World Tree. That I bought. I think issues 1 through 4 were various printings of them, and I ordered a 5th printing, but it hasn't come in. I wonder if they actually did it or not. Because issue 6 is about to come out. That's on my pull list. I think that's coming out in like a month. So I hope or maybe it's coming out this week. Did I see it on my? I just got my final order cut off for this week, and my list of books that are coming that are going to be in the comic shop on Wednesday for my comic shop. So it's always fun to get that final order cut off. What do we got here? Christmas Stories. Vertigo's Winter Edge was my all-time favorite.
What, the one? Yep. The one with Spider Jerusalem? Where is it? And Santa Claus is dead. I killed him. And then it's reported that every child in the city suffered seizures upon hearing the news.
I think I only read 1 issue of Transmetropolitan.
It was a pretty good read.
Yeah, it was one of the. I just found it was a little too cynical for me at the time.
Well, it was still the late 90s. We were still supposed to be cynical.
That's what everything was cynical.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like, if I read it now, I might. I generally like Warren Ellis's writing, and Derek Robertson drew it.
Oh yeah,
I generally like his artwork, so I'll have to check it out sometime.
The first time I saw Derek Robertson was when he replaced Mark Bagley on the New Warriors.
Yeah,
and it was okay, but then he did Doom 2099. And that was amazing. It illustrated Alice's story in an appropriate manner for what he was telling with the 2099 characters, because this was the President Doom storyline.
He got to be more himself.
Yeah, he got more himself because what he did. That's where he evolved into what he became in Transmetropolitan. It's that thing that I've mentioned a couple of times. They draw one way when they're doing superheroes, and then when they're not drawing superheroes, that's when all of their talent actually comes out.
Yeah. Because drawing superheroes is a very specific thing.
Mm-hmm.
That have to be drawn in sort of a very specific way if you want the job of drawing superheroes.
Right.
So he's the kind of guy who probably, if he drew, so you have to develop your quirky style later, and people will accept it more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you start out with your quirky style, no one's going to hire you. That's just the way superhero comics are. Though these days, I couldn't tell you how superhero comics are because I hardly ever see them. When I
They
do see them, I have to say, you better learn to draw from 3D models.
They visually look the same. Very traditional.
Well,
But
the coloring is so different now. I don't even know how traditional.
it is. Yeah, it's computer coloring. I think they overdo it some cases.
Yeah,
But
I
I
think
do like there's stuff going on, because there was a
Okay.
time where it was just talking heads.
right.
Now at least it seems, or in the last few issues I've been getting, there's still a lot of text, but at least the artwork
Who's
is
drawing this book?
interesting. Huh?
Who's drawing that one?
Let's see if I can find the credits easily.
I guess the Vertigo Christmas stories were 3 issues. The third one is the best. Derek on Doom? I forgot that. My favorite was Pat Broderick. I remember when
the credits page is like
buried
more than a quarter way into the book.
Wow.
And it's designed like this.
Because why not?
This one is
Modern Comics has too much pink in colors.
Yeah, it does.
Lee Gabbert is the artist on this.
Okay, I don't know that name. And purples.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can see.
There's some purples for you.
Yeah, the purples.
Yeah. What it is a lot of colorists also use sort of the color swatch themes, which gets annoying to me after a while. Where when you say pink and purples go together as analogous colors. So they might pick, and not all colorists do, but a lot of them do. They'll pick like color themes for a scene. A night scene, we're going to use all the blues. A day scene, we're going to use all the warm colors, all the reds and oranges. We want something to pop. We're going to use pinks and purples. And and everything's analogous colors that go along with themes. And that gets a little tedious to me sometimes.
And it doesn't pop. What pops is that you draw everything yellow in the background and make sure the main character has a colorful uniform. There.
Speaking of color that pops, that just reminded me. I watched a documentary today, Hergé in the Shadow of Tintin.
Hergé.
Hergé. There we go. That also made me wonder, does Tintin actually mean anything? Or Tintin, as the French guy was saying.
No, not really.
It's just okay. I was just wondering because I never thought of that before watching this documentary.
Because it doesn't have a name. It doesn't have a secret identity. It's just Tintin.
They're just sounds, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it was interesting watching. It was about an hour. The documentary on Hergé, who took his initials and reversed them. That's how he got his name.
Yeah, his real name was Georges Rémy.
And it was interesting watching because he got started Tintin in the late 1920s, was it?
Yeah. In 1929, Hergé was writing and drawing for a youth supplement in the Sunday edition of a daily newspaper. Right. And that supplement was called Le Petit Vingtième, the young 20th century.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where they put the comics, because there were no magazines. They appeared in the youth supplements. The Italians had a bunch of them. Like I saw a bunch of credits for Giornalino, where they had Hugo Pratt stories. Hugo Pratt stories before he created Corto Maltese.
Mm-hmm. It was interesting because it was his life story, and he really wanted to be in advertising and design posters. He just stumbled into Tintin and doing comics because there was no comics industry then.
Right.
He was one of the first guys to do it, so he just kind of stumbled into that, and it took him a while to accept that that's what he was gonna. We went through he had depression and this and that over it too, but also I didn't realize he got in trouble during World War II for continuing Tintin.
Yeah.
Because Belgium was taken over by the Nazis, of course, and they were now in charge of the paper. And so him going along with the paper put him on the wrong side of a lot of people in
Well, it
Belgium.
wasn't that difficult because the 20e siècle was the semi-official Catholic Church newspaper. So it would have been published.
After the liberation of Belgium, he was actually arrested, but only spent one night in jail before they decided there was no real reason to arrest him.
Yeah, just read the funny books.
Yeah.
But that was interesting. It was also interesting. And I've heard this before from other like comic book artists, but I think of that generation, that older generation, especially because, like, if you're a comic book artist these days, generally you want to be a comic book artist. And of course, in 1929, there was no such thing as comic book artists. There were comic strip artists, but that was a whole different ballgame. So his and as I've heard other, especially comic book artists describe, sometimes their drawing table is their refuge, but they also feel chained to it because it is a lot of work drawing a comic. It is a lot of and they said he was always drawing because he did everything himself, and he was always drawing comics.
It didn't draw everything himself. He had assistants who became quite famous comic book artists.
Not until the 50s.
Right.
Not until the 50s. Before the 50s, in the 30s and the 40s, he was drawing, and even for that 16-page magazine back in the 30s, he was even drawing the covers and the other stuff in 2 pages a week, I think it was. It wasn't until the 50s where they said he and his wife decided to move it because he was having breakdowns from working too much. He was never away from his drawing table. They decided to have him basically build a country estate in a studio, and that's where he got his assistants. And all of a sudden he had, they showed his studio, and he had like half a dozen people working for him. And also at that time, before then, they said when Tintin first went into color,
yep,
it was because I think before then they said the books were 112 pages, but because of the paper shortage of the war, the printer was like, no, we can't do it. 112. They said, we can do 64 pages, but we can do 64 pages in color. And since he already knew the whole process from making the magazine, he did it in color. But he was doing all the color himself, too, at first. That's why he was having a nervous breakdown. So after he was having a nervous breakdown, he got the assistant, which I think was the late 40s or early 50s. I can't remember when.
Because
that's when it took off.
Yeah, Tintin magazines. Tintin gets spun off into a magazine right after the end of World War II.
Right.
And I think it was the 5th album was the first one to be serialized in the magazine instead of the newspaper. Because if you'll notice something about old French comics, even when they came out in albums, the pages are numbered halfway through the page and then at the bottom, as if they were Sunday strips.
Yeah.
And that's how they got originally were published. They were horizontal.
They said at one time during the war, they could only publish 4 panels at a time. Those were the horizontal ones.
Yeah.
So it was you only got 4 panels a week or whatever it was.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was. But I think also he was probably like I've heard other cartoon. He had to actually come to grips with the fact that he was a comic book artist because he didn't set out to be that. It didn't exist when he became one. And they said, I think it was in the 50s, he became really interested in modern art, abstract art he liked a lot. So he actually, I forget the guy's name. I'd never heard of him before. One of the big abstract, because most of the big abstract artists in the 50s were American. But he got one who was European and taught him, how to paint. And he did, I think they said like 37 or 39 abstract paintings before he decided, you know what, these abstract painters give it their all. I'm a cartoonist. And that's when he came to grips with him being a comic book artist, sort of cartoonist. And I think that may be when he got his studio too. Like I said, once you get, all of a sudden he had like a dozen people working for him, left his wife for one of his colorists.
Yeah.
But like I didn't realize it was like he was even coloring all that stuff. So it was like, and in those days it was a lot of work to color.
Yeah, they had no idea, and they didn't use the assembly line process, because since the comics were first in black and white, and they only started doing the coloring mostly because it was better in the books. Right. Although I imagine that Spirou kind of helped getting actually convinced to do color as well, because Spirou was Tintin's commercial nemesis, and they had two different design comic design schools. So there was more potential in doing stuff in color. What they were not used was in having the labor division, but the fact that Hergé was making good money probably. Hergé's not the European stuff.
That's an insult to Hergé. Stanley couldn't draw a lick.
Also,
Thanksgiving go every day.
Also, Hergé actually created Captain Haddock. So.
Hergé came up with all the characters and drew them. He didn't just ride coattails. But it was a short kind of overview. It was interesting him talking about the early stuff too that had the racism in it or whatever. And he was like, I just didn't know. He's like, he did the one. He's like, he was talking to which was the one in Africa. He's like, I just talked to a bunch of guys who were there, and they were all colonizers. And he's like, I didn't know. He's like, he said they told me they were childish and lazy, and I just didn't think about it for what. He's like, I didn't mean to be racist. I was racist.
Yeah, there were no black people in Belgium in the 1930s. How would you know?
Hergé's ethics are debated in a Stan Lee kind of fashion. Modern times shit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, he was working for the Catholic Church newspaper. In that regard, he was conservative for the what would be considered conservative in Europe in the 1930s. So you would not think that, but yeah, Europeans did not know any black people.
Right.
There weren't any. So everything that was not set in their hometown, it was a stereotype.
Right.
They wouldn't know. They would have to read about it. you couldn't travel much. You could take the train somewhere if you could afford to take the day off, because it would take you the whole day to travel somewhere, even by train.
And at least according to that little clip I saw of him, he learned he was racist. He
Well,
regretted
the
it.
thing is, all of the early stuff was redrawn,
Yeah.
except Tintin in the Land of the Soviets, which is still published with the original art. But Tintin in Congo was redrawn, was redialogued, and it still comes out as modern standards racist. It didn't improve it much.
Yeah.
So the thing is, I don't find the first 3 Tintins to be really important.
Right.
It starts with number 4, the Black Island.
I think they mentioned that too. That's when it really became something. Well, they were inventing He was inventing comics, so comic books.
Tintin in the Land of the Soviets is it's just slapstick comedy, talking shit about communism. Really, what else did you expect? Tintin in Congo is what it is, and Tintin in America, everyone in America is a gum chewing gangster, unless they live outside the cities and they're cowboys and Indians. What would somebody in Europe know about America in the 1930s? They have gum chewing gangsters and cowboys and Indians.
Just like the movie show.
Exactly.
Yep.
And I didn't realize that it's the first time I heard the name of his style. What did they call it? Clear line?
Clear line.
Which somebody in the 70s invented. That came up with a name for his style, which is the clear line style. I was like, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, because you'll notice that in the beginning, eventually they diversified, but in the beginning, most of the guys who started working for Hergé, and then you'd have Jacques Martin and the Blake and Mortimer guy. Edgar Pierre Jacobs, they drew in a similar style to Hergé, even though you can see that the techniques are not identical, the aesthetics are.
Yeah, it was interesting, and they mentioned that. I think it was when he was finally happy, kind of, with his work at like the 50th anniversary of Tintin. And then, like, he was celebrated and got to meet all his fans, and they were like, he finally came to grips with his legacy of being a cartoon. Like, it only took him 50 years, but that was somebody, he didn't set out to be that. He became that, and they said often during his life he felt chained to Tintin. There was even one time he stopped doing it because he couldn't take it anymore. That was before he got the studio. And it made me think too. At the end, they said he in his will it says no one else can do Tintin stuff.
And I'm not sure that's true. The estate executor married Hergé's second wife.
Okay.
Got control of everything, and the only thing they put out is merchandising. They don't put out new books. The problem is that Tintin reprints are not selling as well as they used to. And all of the other classic characters are now controlled by the publishers.
Right.
Here's the thing: you in the US, you waited until the creators could take back control, but in France, since the creators always own the stuff, you wait until they retire or die to sell the rights to the publishers.
but
there are new stories. Everyone's making new stories with Asterix, and they're making new stories with Spirou, and so in that regard, Tintin is losing out.
Yeah, but if that's in there that he didn't want, after watching this they didn't mention this, but after watching this video, this little video on him, like I said, it was about an hour. I think the reason he would have put that in there was he didn't want to chain another cartoonist to their desk for 50 years. I really think that is why he would have put that in there. Like he said, he put that in. That's just after what that's just my idea. I'm like, you know what? I bet he was just like, you know what?
Sure. What he didn't,
I don't want to change someone else to Tintin.
Yeah, but what he didn't conceive is that's not how it's working.
I'm just telling you. I think that I don't think that's right. I think there are plenty of artists who would love to be chained to Tintin.
Mm-hmm. There are, yeah.
But I think in his mind, he probably was like, you know what? I don't know if that's true. That's just an idea I had after watching this, because he felt at different times in his life chained to Tintin.
Mm-hmm. I can see Casterman, the publisher, pressuring the guy to release the Tintin. Here's the one thing: the owner of the estate has tried for many years to block Casterman from reprinting Tintin books, but it was always in the contract that Casterman keeps the rights as long as they keep the books in print. And they're always in print.
Mine the comic says, Paulo, I got the new Blake and Mortimer this week.
Yeah, there's a new Blake. I don't even know who's writing and drawing nowadays.
He's lost track.
The last one doesn't look like typical Blake and Mortimer. Even the clear line style is kind of disappearing, because the background art, the backgrounds are in the environment, they're becoming too much Art Deco. And so
ultra
drawing the
clear line, kind of impressionist minimalism, and I'm kind of disappointed in Flock's tailoring.
Okay, yeah, impressionist minimalism. Yeah, sure. I would say Art Deco, but yeah, in the end, it's moving away. The thing about clear line is that it is detailed, but it deceives your eye into thinking it's simple.
Right.
Especially because a lot of action is displayed as slapstick. Movement is portrayed as slapstick. Or things frozen or like you're running, but you're actually frozen in mid-air. But you can see the movement anyway, and everything around you. You have one or two lines to depict an object, but you can see the entire object as though it was real. And in Art Deco, you don't do that. It's more like what Gilbert Hernandez was drawing in Mr. X. That's kind of how I see what the current Blake and Mortimer artist is doing.
Mm-hmm. It says, in a certain way, Asterix stereotypes characters were more accurate. Wouldn't there be stereotypes of characters from 1,000 or 1,500 years ago? What year does Asterix take place in?
It takes place in 50 BC, but it's making fun of present day. It's always making fun of present day.
Yeah, because they would have characters. They very much did what the Flintstones used to do, and just take the name and then add like stone to the end of it. So there was like a 007 character in one of the ones that I lettered, and he was drawn to look like Sean Connery.
Yeah.
Stone.
And he was a double agent. He was a druid who was working for the Romans.
Yes.
One last comic I got this week, which I got the David Mack cover on, is Darkling. This is another Archie horror comic. I like David Mack's covers.
Yes.
He always does pretty women with lots of design.
I like the coloring on it. It's usually, I think, watercolors, or it has a watercolor kind of look to it.
Story by Sarah Kuhn, Kuhn. Line art by Carola Borelli. Named after a car, Corolla. No, it's an A, no, pardon me. Coloring by Ellie Wright and lettering by Jack Morelli. Oh, too much pink and purple.
Yes.
And this is another one of these Archie horror books, which I think they've been coming out with one a month because I've got a bunch of them now. And let me see if I can get you. In the back, it tells where she's from originally. Maybe in the early 80s. Was she character made her first appearance in The Mighty Crusaders #3 in 1983. So she's just a character who showed up. And if you remember, Archie tried to relaunch their superhero line in the early 80s, but everything only lasted a few issues. And I guess she was one of the characters who was in this. She's got a cloak that's attached to her that she can transport people to other places in. So if you fight her, she just sends you somewhere. But nicely done. 20. All these Archie horror ones are like 20-page stories, and then a bunch of backup material showing you behind the scenes. And they're all pretty well done, I have to say. Another, they all have nice covers too. They get some good cover artists to do these, like David Mack. Is Archie still in Westchester?
As far as I'm aware of, they're still there.
Yeah, Pelham, New York. Publisher is John Goldwater. President and editor-in-chief is Mike Pellerito. I haven't heard of any of these people. I was just reading their names to see if I had.
I know Mike has either stopped by a comic book shop in Westchester called Alternate Realities.
Okay.
So and a lot of the Archie guys, or a few of the Archie workers, would go there. So that's how I know some of the Archie guys.
All right.
Yeah, Goldwater's probably the grandson of the founder.
Okay. Wasn't there a granddaughter in charge at one point or something?
Yeah, one of the Silverclights, I think.
I remember her making waves for some reason, but I don't remember the story.
Yeah.
There was a few allegations of her in the workplace that weren't too favorable for her. And
I have a vague memory of it, but
yeah, it hit the internet for a while. I know people can still find information about it, but it went a little insane after a while. But I do recall at some cons, even cons like as recent as this year, that she would be at cons. I don't know if she was representing Archie or herself, but I do recall like she had her own table and she had Archie stuff on the table. I just don't know if she is still at Archie.
Right. I didn't see her name in there. At least it was dudes who were in charge. Yeah, I've never. I know one person who used to work at Archie, Matt Maley, who I went to school with and also worked at Marvel. Before he came over to Marvel, he worked at Archie for a couple of years.
Mm-hmm. Joe Quesada's wife was at Archie.
Yes, she was there too. Right. Nancy Keesian.
So it was Nancy, and I forget the assistant editor. She was also from Archie. Tom DeFalco was from Archie.
Oh, he was?
His first comic book gigs was for Archie. And let's see, Ski eventually went to work for Archie for a little while.
Okay.
Who else? And then I know about the artist from Archie as well.
Nancy had to quit Marvel because she was married to Joe Quesada, because that was one of Ike's rules. You couldn't date a coworker or be married to them. I think it was kind of a crazy rule, especially since she'd been working for Marvel Knights for a long time.
Yep. Well, Ike had a whole lot of crazy rules.
Yep.
You can't have a couch in the office because people will have sex on couches.
Well, Thank you for telling us what you like to do, Ike.
Yeah.
That's why Disney had to kick him out.
As if Disney would care if you have sex with the secretaries.
Yeah.
It's just about time to wrap it up.
Mm-hmm.
We have any last words before we go? What are you working on tonight, Wilson?
I'm coloring some pages for Fred Haynes on a project he has.
Oh,
I
Fred
could even
Haynes.
tell you. Yeah, I couldn't even tell you the name of the project because it's all initials for the files. So it's like NABTS 4. So it's page 4.
It's not
whatever it is.
Is it the Hero of Rockaway?
No, this is something else. This is a job that he got from someone else. So it's a freelance gig that he got, and he asked me, would I mind coloring it? I was like, sure. So I've been.
Fred Haynes used to work. Well, he never actually worked in the office at Marvel. He was just there all the time. Did some freelance for Marvel. I know he worked in the office at DC.
He worked at the office in DC, basically the same type of stuff in the we would be you guys would be doing in the bullpen. He was doing over at DC. For a short while, he was doing bullpen work in the bullpen at Marvel as well. I know.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if he actually ever did or not. I'm just not 100% positive. But yeah, he does a weekly webcomic called The Hero of Rockaway. Which I call superhero in poetry. Because the whole thing is it's like a weekly web comic strip, and there's these constant superhero fights going on, and he writes this sort of very poetic superhero narration and dialogue, at least to my ear, sort of noir poetic, not hoity-toity poetic. And I read it every week. It's in my RSS feed, so I've been keeping up with it for years. But if you want to read a good web comic, put The Hero of Rockaway in your search bar, and you can find it. Have you ever read The Hero of Rockaway, Wilson?
I have not.
It's a good
read. I get the emails for it. It's like, oh, I got to check it out, and I never
click on them. Huh?
I never click on it.
Click on them. It's fun stuff.
I do definitely need to, like, the next time I get an email, I'm just going to click on it and just read it right then and there. Because I never get back to it. I always go, oh, there's a new issue, the new episode out. I got to go check it out, and I never do.
It was good to. Glad you enjoyed the show, Mr. White Gloves. Good to see you around again. It's been a while, and we do this every Friday night.
Yep.
So we will catch you all next time. Say goodbye, Paolo.
Good one, everybody.
Goodbye, Paolo.
Yeah.
Let's see if we can get some fireworks. Where is our double thumbs up? Come on. It's not doing anything?
The thumb up came up before.
Yeah, you did something like this.
You have
just
to throw your fingers up for something else.
Not giving us,
look at
not
that.
giving us anything. Oh, well.
Why not?
They probably want us to pay for that now.
Of course.
Take it easy, Gus. We'll catch you later. Bye-bye.
Take care.